Chapter 1. We must banish the dragons from Krynn. Talon paused here, as she always did, and waited for her audience to react. Her age and small, slender stature often puzzled people when she took a podium. But if there was one thing Talon had learned to do well in the past year, it was capture an audience with the power of her words. This was the crucial moment, Talon knew, from giving the same speech in a dozen of places. Either people began to look at her with agreement and interest, or they rolled their eyes and dismissed her as a lunatic. This time, though, the audience was different. This time she stood in an amphitheater, addressing a crowd of well-to-do city people, not country folk like herself. These knights and merchants were all citizens of Palanthas. Their beloved city was saved from destruction during the War of the Lance by the good dragons. Or so they said. Talon knew that there was no such thing as a good dragon. She had taken special care to look as noble as she could, so they couldn't hold her appearance against her, twining her hair into dozens of intricate black braids that wove around her head and cascaded down her back. She couldn't do anything about her plain blue cleric's robes, but she hoped her words could convince this audience where her clothes could not. The heat of the summer sun didn't help her appearance any, though she wasn't just sweating because of the heat. She had to convince these people. Their good opinion would make or break the heirs of Huma in Palanthas. There were some murmurs and darkened glances from some in the audience, but at least they were still listening. Talon took a deep breath and continued. My brother was cruelly murdered by a dragon. He did not die at the hands of the Dark Queen's minions, the chromatic dragons. My brother was killed by a copper dragon, one of the metallic dragons that dare call themselves good dragons. More people were muttering now, and they did not sound convinced. Talon glanced into the front row where her friends sat, looking for their take on the crowd. They made a rather unusual rainbow. Rogan in his white and silver knight's armor, his sister Rama in a brocade white dress that was closer to a fine lady's gown than wizard robes. Combined with their brilliant clothing, the siblings' golden hair and lightly freckled skin made a curiously matched set with Elret's toffee-colored skin and nondescript sailor's garb. Rogan and Rama had grown up in Palanthas and knew these people better than Talon did. Both of them looked concerned, but Rama motioned for Talon to continue. How can creatures capable of such destruction be good? Their strength and magical capabilities are beyond what any human can ever hope to achieve. Without their eggs, these foul beasts known as Draconians would never walk these lands. At that last point, Talon saw a few nods in the crowd. Palanthas knew how evil the Draconians were, but there wasn't as high a percentage of people with open, curious faces as she was used to. Not by a long shot. She was losing them. Better turn it over to Rogan. He might have better luck. Talon launched into the conclusion of her speech. I say that we are better off before these monsters return to Krynn. Now that the war is over, we must devote our energies to one purpose. Those of us who pursue this purpose call ourselves the heirs of Huma. We took this name because we seek to do what the hero Huma did once. Talon took a deep breath and raised her voice high. We must banish all dragons of Krynn. The crowd rose to its feet at this proclamation, which was normal. What was not normal was the fury in people's eyes, the clenched fists. Talon's friends leaped to their feet and moved toward her. Elret was first to reach the podium. The amphitheater erupted in derisive shouts. Forget it, Elret said, grabbing Talon by the arm. We have to get out of here. You may have started a riot. By talking? Talon pulled against Elret. We have to convince them. These are some of the most influential people with the Whitestone Council. Talon, this people won't be convinced. Rama grabbed Talon's other arm, pulling her away from the audience, which was crowding down toward the podium. I don't think they'll hurt you, but you could be imprisoned. For many nights, what you said is the same as treason. But none of you would have had a chance to speak. Talon insisted Elred pulled aside the black drop behind the podium. Rogan and Rama, you have to tell them about the dragons who have destroyed the knighthood. And Elred, you need to tell them about the silver dragon that killed your parents. You think that would convince them? Elred asked, shoving Talon through the curtain, just in time to avoid a rotten tomato at the head. I know a place where we can be safe until we can leave the city. Follow me." The air had been hot outside, but behind the curtain it was stifling and unbearable. They breathed gulps of fresh air when they popped out behind the Forum. No one was here, but they could still hear the angry roar of the crowd. "We should leave Palanthus now," Rogan said. "After that reaction, I don't think Rama and I can protect you, even with the help of our influential friends." "Protect her," Rama scoffed. "We'll probably be jailed ourselves." "I can't leave yet," Talon said, leaning against the wall and feeling the warmth of the sun-heated bricks through a rope. "I wish we could see the Lady Grisania, or Reverend Son Illustan. If we could get the backing of the church, we might have a chance with the Whitestone Council." "Lady Christina isn't here, and besides, we can't march up to the temple now," Rama argued. "People will notice you." "Only the rich people at the meeting will notice her," Elric corrected. "There's more to Palanthus than knights and merchants, though I don't suppose you and your brother ever really paid attention to that." Rama glowered at Elric, but followed him as he led them to one of the worst parts of town. Ironically, it was directly behind the new temple of Paladine. Although the wretched masses behind the temple wouldn't accost a cleric, they made Talon nervous. She came from a mountain village, and while there had been hard winters and summer droughts, no one had ever starved or lacked a place to sleep. Here, though, in the richest city on Krynn, people slept in doorways, under rude tents made of cast-off lumber and filthy blankets, and on the street itself. "Is this safe?" Rama asked, hiding behind Rogan to avoid the reach of an old woman in rags. Elred sneered at her. "You and your family live like kings, yet pay no attention to the suffering right here at your feet, and you call my people barbarians." He walked away before Rama could retort. Looking ashamed, Rama dug into her pockets for a few coins. The small pieces of steel Rama was handing out were but a fraction of the girl's fortune. Elred joined Rogan down the alley. He shook the hand of a mother holding a crying baby. Or at least Talon thought he was shaking her hand, but when Elred turned away, she broke a piece of bread and handed a portion to a small child clinging to her dress. He was handing out the food from his traveling pack. With a sigh, Talon looked up at the broad expanse of the back wall of the temple. It was so different on this side. If she closed her eyes, she could remember the first time she saw it, when she took her vows as an acolyte of Mishkael. To Talon, the sight of the new temple at Palanthus had been as welcome as fresh water and hot food after the long journey from Forest Edge, her small hometown in the mountains. Compared to the war-ravaged countryside of the Vanguard Mountains, the city had appeared as a gem set into a rough seam of rock. The beauty of the city paled next to the newly built temple of Paladine.